I am Stu Palmer from Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and I just want to thank Chris Lappin of Broken But Glorious BBG for the invite. He hasn't got an episode this month, so he has approached me to come and show some clips, some stuff from the vault I've decided to do. Rather than doing just one episode from the vault, I'm going to do clips, and yeah, I've had some great guests over the last 3 or so years, but here is the first clip coming up right now. We crack open the vault and we go back to the summer of 2020 to episode 50, the landmark 50th episode. And it was with none other than Hollywood from Glow, Miss Jeannie Bassone. And it was just great to talk to her about her career and Glow and how much of an effect Glow had on women's wrestling in the 80s. In this clip, she talks about Tina Ferrari, aka Ivory, who is now a WWE Hall of Famer. So yeah, let's crack open the vault and begin this special episode for Broken But Glorious, a showcase. It is the vault of Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and we're opening it with Hollywood from Glow, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling. Did you have creative ideas for the character, or were you told how the character would be?
So, first of all, before the girls were chosen, they said, these are the characters that we have in mind for you girls to play. There were different sorts, and Hollywood and Vine, those characters appealed to me, as did Tina and Ashley. I'm like, those are characters that I could relate to. So when they said, Jeannie, you're going to be Hollywood, I was like, yes, oh, this is exciting. So from there, they said to me, okay, I go, well, what is Hollywood? Well, she's a bad girl. All right, so that's easy. She doesn't follow directions or rules, breaks rules. And they said that we were these street punks. I'm like, God, I go, what? A street punk? This is interesting. Let's see how that works.
You touched upon, you said about Tina Ferrari, and we obviously know her very well as Ivory in her Stampede.
Correct.
WWE. Now, I know Stone Cold gives a lot of praise to Tina Ferrari when he does the podcast. He was a big fan. So how is it working with Tina Ferrari, as we would call her from Glow?
She was a star from the get-go. She had it together. Her and Ashley were cheerleaders, and they were dancers, and they had been in front of a live audience and a crowd. So they were way 5 steps, 10 steps ahead of me. I'd never been on TV. I never acted. I didn't perform in front of a live audience. So right away, I would say both of those girls had star quality immediately. And she was just really well all around in the ring. And she deserved to be champion. And she deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, and move on. So very proud of her.
I remember being at WrestleMania Fan Access. And she was busy. She was walking. I wanted to say hello like that. I let her. She was busy.
Yeah.
She was obviously
doing
a signing, but she was. She just seems such a nice woman, lady.
Absolutely.
So that's cool.
Great, wonderful girl.
Which other girls on the roster did you enjoy working with?
I enjoyed back in the day all of the ladies. The best matches that I had, though, were with the Farmer's Daughters. Oh, my gosh. The heat with us was just crazy because the first Farmer's Daughter, Sally, went to the same high school as me. So when you are, wrestling against someone that you went to school with and you want to win and she wants to win, it was heated every time. I mean, you got the best matches. They'd say, Hollywood, you're wrestling Sally. I go, again? They were just the best matches. That's why. Even though we didn't get along very well, that made for even more successful matches. Yeah. I liked her. Everybody was wonderful. Fiji, you knew you were never going to beat a 350-pound woman, ever. Americana, what a sweet woman. Really, really nice. I'm so glad that I didn't have to wrestle any of the heels, because if I had to wrestle Spanish Red, oh, boy, there would have been some heat there too. She was fiery, great worker for sure. Godiva and I, we were both bad guys. But my favorite seasons were season 1 and 2, just because, we all trained together. We all were learning together. And by the time season 3 came along, all 99% of the girls left, and we had all new characters for season 3 and 4. So I had to, make friends with new girls who were just learning again. I took a lot of, I didn't come in and have to work, 7 days a week thank goodness. So I would go back to California after the shows on Saturday night. So I'd had Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night in California. And then I'd fly back to Las Vegas and then get ready for the show for Saturday.
Fantastic insight from Jeannie Bisson. I can't wait to get her back on. I will get her back on. She's been working the convention circuits. Post-pandemic, obviously, it's calmed down quite a lot. Conventions have been happening. So, yeah, I will get Jeannie back on. Hollywood from Glow, that is for certain. And moving on, we're heading to a WWE Hall of Famer and one half of the Harlem Heat. It's Mr. Stevie Ray. This was from the summer of 2020 also. And this is clip number 2 of the Vault of Stu's Wrestling Podcast. Here we go.
Just to fast forward a little bit, obviously, I remember you guys fondly when I was a kid growing up in the UK, and I remember you coming in to WCW. How was that getting called to obviously get to WCW? How did you and Booker find it initially?
I mean, professional wrestling is a natural progression. Professional wrestling is professional wrestling, whether you're working in a little chicken coop or if you're working in front of 20,000 people, So it was a natural progression. The only difference between Global and WCW is just a little bit more logistics, a little bit more politics, a lot of the stuff that goes with, bigger business. The work in the ring is the same. The guys, and me and my brother would always look at guys like, okay, it's just another guy. Nobody impressed us. We watched people on TV. Once we got good at our craft, and we always said, okay, we can go in there and work with anybody. And that's the thing about our mentality. It was like, I don't care if it's the Road Warriors, I don't care if it's Steiner Brothers. We didn't care who it was, man. If you turn the green light on, we know what we can do. So big time wrestling never overwhelmed us. Never did. Because we knew we were built for it. Because I come from a competitive family. I come from a family of athletes. My mother was an athlete, so looking at things like that, I don't know. We was kind of unique in that way because we used to talk with each in our hotel room. We used to look at stuff and go, man, if we get in the ring with them two guys, we're going to make them look like they're going backwards, And we hadn't even got to the big time yet. We're still in Global, So whether it's WWE, whether it was WCW, we didn't care because we always knew we was built for the big show.
Mm-hmm.
What it was like. Other than all the other logistics trend, like a bigger show, it's like going from a soap opera to a major motion picture. But at the end of the day, you still got to act.
Was Sid heavily involved in you going over to WCW?
Oh yeah, he was. He was kind of like a liaison between WCW and what we were doing at the time, and Sid was a big part of this angle that he was pretty much pushing at the time. So yes, in that regard, yes.
Just fast forwarding a bit again, how was it having Sherry Martel as part of the team?
It was great. That was another one of our ideas. It was great. And we put that whole thing together. So a lot of things with us didn't happen because of our own ideas. So Sherry was like something well, they were trying to find, different people to be with us. We didn't want anybody with us. We were getting ready to tell WCW, we don't want a manager. We knew we were getting ready to get a push, and we were going to take advantage of it because we knew we had leverage now that other organizations was looking at us, and, it's like, now we're going to start to push the envelope from a business perspective now. And if it hadn't been for Sherry giving us the idea, we were going to tell WCW we don't want a manager. It just happened to work out that one day we saw her, she was like, hey, what if I would be your manager? And we looked at each other like, hey, that'd be a good idea. Let's take it to the office. And we took it to the office, and that's what happened. So when you ask questions like, how was it? If it was our idea, it's easy to figure out.
Fantastic there from Stevie Ray. And the Harlem Heat still remain one of my favourite tag teams. Booker and Stevie were amazing, ahead of their time. When you look back, they were ahead of their time for tag team wrestling. Just a fantastic insight there from Stevie Ray. Next, as we go deeper into the vault, it was the first 2-part episode that I ever did for Stu's Wrestling Podcast, and it was with WWE producer. He produces a lot of women's matches. Obviously, we knew him in wrestling as Tyson Kid, but he goes by TJ Wilson, his real name now, produces a lot of the women's matches. But we went in to Canadian Stampede, as you're just about to hear, and his experiences with the Hart family on that weekend. It was just amazing in 1997. And then we talk about his tag team with Cesaro, which lasted 6 months after TJ lost his career to an injury, to his neck injury that he had. But yeah, I love TJ. I've got so much respect for him. Did meet him as well. I've met him a couple of times at conventions and over here when they've toured. But yeah, here we go. This is TJ Wilson, Mr. Tyson Kid of WWE.
I'm going to fast forward a bit into 97. Obviously, Canadian Stampede. I've got to ask about it because obviously at the time, us as fans, we didn't know about the family as such, did we? Especially the kids and stuff. How was Canadian Stampede? The build-up, the day, everything. How was it?
Gives me goosebumps. Gives me goosebumps talking about Canadian Stampede, man. I can't watch that match without feeling emotional. Man, the energy in that arena was so nuts. It was so nuts. That was Taka and the Great Sasuke have a match on that pay-per-view, just kind of like with really no like build or. And like I remember seeing, I was sitting front row with Harry, and I remember seeing that match live and being blown away and being like, wow, like if this is the best thing on the show, that's awesome. And then of course the 10-man tag comes along and destroys everything on the entire show, and the crowd was unbelievable. For the entire match, I don't know how long it is with entrances and everything. It's maybe 40-something minutes or close to 50 or something. I don't know, but I'm sitting beside Harry, and like we can't even speak to each other. It's so loud in that arena. And if you go watch it back, you'll see the camera shaking a lot, and you'll hear the announcers talking about. A lot of times, it's the sound doesn't always come through on TV in terms of like the arenas. Like I've been in arenas that are rocking. You watch on TV and it's good, but not quite what it sounded like actually being there. And I mean that night was one of the craziest things ever. And then the next that night we had. There's a big barbecue at Stu's after the pay-per-view. And so like, yeah, I mean, it was a fun time. And the next day I drive up to Raw in Edmonton with Bruce Hart drove, but with Davey Boy and Brian Pillman. What an experience for us. I was about to turn 17, but a 16-year-old kid.
I just to touch upon Bret and Austin at the time.
Yeah.
That feud, man, that had more legs. That had more legs again, didn't it? I know they had a great.
Oh man!
Imagine how much further that could have gone if Bret hadn't have gone to WCW.
Dude, when I sit and like fantasy book, could you imagine if somehow corporate, Mr. McMahon character came about without the screw job, and then imagine like Bret siding with corporate Mr. McMahon against Steve Austin as, oh my God, it's unbelievable. Their matches and that everything they did felt so real and felt very authentic. Can you imagine because think about their matches, the WrestleMania 13 match, which I think is the perfect match, the Survivor Series 96 match. Bret and Steve's matches were never for titles, especially never for the world title. Can you imagine you had that to it as well?
I still hold them. I'm not just blowing smoke because it's Bret, and obviously how well you know Bret. The matches, man, they're still in the top three. I've got even just to go back to '92, TJ. Bret and Piper at WrestleMania 8, classic.
Yeah.
Classic. Yep. Oh, it doesn't. Does not age. I don't know how you look at it. Performer.
Yep. Same thing. I think. I know that some studying went down. Like I've been watching a lot of Bret's matches recently, and like I just think, can you imagine, like, yeah, man, just, yeah. It's funny to me that, like, his prime, at 40 years old, he was in his prime. That's crazy. And, like, and I think Vince and I think WWF knew, and Brett, they had such a, they knew each other so well that I think, you know, the WCW run never quite materialized to maybe what it could. Well, definitely didn't materialize to what it could or should have, unfortunately. But, man, like, if you just imagine, like, 2 years later, imagine, like, Brett versus Austin, and imagine, like, what The Rock ends up becoming, and imagine Brett and The Rock at that time. You know, I'm like, missed out on some really, really, really awesome moments and matches, I think, which, you know, you could say that about a lot of things, but it just, with Brett, it feels a bit more real, I guess.
Just to go back, you're saying about you coming together and it worked. Stars align.
Yeah.
Stars align for the pair of you. Like, you know, I loved it. I like the little man, big man, you know, tandem. That's,
yeah. I think I work best in that situation.
Obviously, you did it with Harry. So
yeah,
it's just what you know. But the pair of you, man, honestly, me and the big staunch wrestling fans who've gone to WrestleMania. Yeah. We've gone to WrestleMania many times. There's a lot of this. Everyone, I mean this now. That Tyson and Cesaro, incredible. Everyone.
Man, that means a lot to me. It really does. What I love about that is we literally teamed for 6 months exactly. We teamed from December 1st, 2014, and then I got hurt June 1st, 2015. We teamed for 6 months to the day, and, like, people still talk about it, and it was 5 years ago. And so that means the world to me. It really means the world to me because, like I said, I was riding that wave, and I did an interview for a friend back home, and he asked me if I knew of any, like, long-term creative that we were going to do down the road. I knew nothing. I just knew that, like, I was coming to work, and I was really happy, and it was really fun teaming with Cesaro, and he made my job so easy. Cesaro made my job so easy. I didn't have to be the quarterback anymore. I could just kind of be the guy that you tell me the plays, and I'll just go run them. And a lot of times in my career, I was being the quarterback, and now I didn't have to be. And it was fun, man. It was literally so much fun.
Keeping with the Heart connection, and obviously the British Bulldog, who we knew so well with the Hearts as well. They were intertwined, and I got to speak to none other than Davey Boy, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith's daughter, Georgia Smith. And this was from last year, and we got to talking about SummerSlam 92, which I was in attendance for. She was in attendance to see her dad with her brother Harry, obviously we know so well, and her mum, Diana, who was at ringside. You know, they made her a focal point for that. So yeah, let's get into it. SummerSlam 1992, as she talks about her experience there at Wembley Stadium with her dad. And obviously Brett taking on one another in one of the most iconic matches of all time in wrestling and WWF, WWE.
What's some of your favourite matches of your dad? I think I'll ask you that.
Obviously SummerSlam 1992, just the atmosphere of the match. Sorry, my phone keeps falling.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Just everything, you know, the fact that it was in England, that was a big thing. And just, I was there live for it, and I got to see it. And, you know, it's never been done before, never has been done again since then. And with the world that we're in, I don't know if it will ever happen again, unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever, if they'll get to travel. I mean, I'm sure they will. I'm sure things will get back to normal, but, it's just looking back now, it's like, wow, like, just crazy. So that, his match with Brett, I think it was In Your House. It was 1995. I believe there was like blood involved, but I rewatched that match, and just the athleticism, and they just gave it their all. And some people will say that match was better than SummerSlam. And, I enjoy both of them. And, the Canadian Stampede, the Calgary Stampede in 1997. I was there live for that. One of the most loudest events I've ever been to. And, it was a celebration of, you couldn't not have the Hart Foundation lose. And being there, it was like the last time my family was like together, and we were a unit, and, things were really good. So as a fan, being there live, it was amazing. And as a family member, watching it all and being there after, that was really cool. And I did enjoy a lot of some stuff of my dad's in WCW 1993 when he was like with Sting. He had some really good matches with William Regal, and I'm looking back now, when I'm running his social media and watching. I've had to like re-educate myself on all this stuff because I'm not like a massive. I mean, wrestling's in my blood, but besides my family, I don't really. I just mainly watch my family and my dad's stuff. So I'm going back and watching his stuff and bits of history. And I saw a clip of him and Sting today, and I was like, they're really cool. They're really cool as a team. They're really cool. And, so some segments were a bit cheesy with the Shockmaster and, Beach Blast. But, wherever my dad was, my dad tried to make it do what he could with what he was given with. And I feel like he pretty much excelled every single time. I know his last run, unfortunately, it didn't work out, but he was the man.
I did tell you in email when we spoke. I was at Summerslam '92 as well. I came down on the bus from Wales, and I just remember when he came out with Lennox Lewis with the Union Jack. That's such an iconic moment. I know the match itself was incredible. That's in my top three personally, but it was everything that went with it. It was, your mum at ringside, obviously, because Brett and Davey going against each other. It just had everything. And I say to younger people that haven't watched a lot of the older matches to go back and watch that match specifically. It's incredible.
Yeah, and you make a point because, looking back, it was obviously a huge event. But now I believe it's more talked about than ever, and it's become like a classic, like not a cult classic, but like it's become more every year. It's becoming more and more of a classic and more talked about. And I've said this in podcasts before, but I watched that match, in 2002 with my dad, 10 years after it happened, and it's just crazy how we watched it and enjoyed it. But imagine watching it today with him. How amazing that would be. And like you said, it was just everything that went along with it, with my mom, and just the whole story of it. And it was believable and it was real. And I think that's why people got behind it. And it was. I wish I could go back as the age I am now and watch it live then.
I think it's time to get a Hall of Fame old school guy on. It's none other than the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, who's in the NWA Hall of Fame and the Lou Thesz Hall of Fame as well. Multi-time champion in the NWA. Great as a heel. He did so well as a heel. He was hated, but he did become a face more latterly in his run with the NWA WCW. So without further ado, here is Hall of Fame inductee, legend of wrestling. It is none other than the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff.
I need to ask, there was something in the water in Minnesota, because how many guys came through? I know it's been asked. I've got to ask it, I want to get your perspective on that. It's just firing off the names, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, the Road Warriors, John Nord. A lot of people leave John Nord out, Barry Darso, all them guys. I'm missing a few there as well.
Well, what's even more amazing, I joke and I say it was the minerals in the water tower, especially in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Now, a lot of the guys, Tom Zink, Mike Enos, Wayne Bloom, Scott Norton, obviously Jesse Ventura. I mean, there were a lot. If you want to go way back, Vern Gagne, Mean Gene Okerlund, even though he wasn't a wrestler. Even more interesting, Stu, is nine of us all came from what is called Robbinsdale High School.
Yeah.
One high school. Now, a lot of those guys we named came from the Twin Cities, outside of, part of Minneapolis, St. Paul. But just from Robbinsdale High School, you named it, Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, Barry Darso, Tom Zink, Brady Boone, Nikita Koloff, John Nord, and several of us all played on American football as we know it. I know football is different over there in the UK. That's right. Yeah. But seven of us from the same high school. Well, I say nine technically because me and Gene Okerlund and Vern Gagne also were graduates of Robbinsdale High School. Now, years prior, but they were still from Robbinsdale. So had to be the minerals in the water with all those lakes in Minnesota, Stu.
I will never see the likes of it again either. You know, that roll call of people. It'll never.
Right.
It's incredible to me. You know, it's just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
We go into the vault again, and this was nearly 2 years ago, but it does sadden me a little bit because we lost a great man in Del Wilkes. You'd know him fondly as the Patriot in wrestling in WWF, WCW. He worked All Japan many, many years ago. A great, great person. I was in touch with him after we did this episode, but we lost him. We lost him at a very young age. Last year, 59, 60 was Del. A lovely, lovely man, and this is just a fantastic clip talking about his run in WWF, although brief in 1997, and taking on Bret Hart, who is still my favourite wrestler of all time. So here he is, the man, the legend, R.I.P., Del Wilkes, the Patriot. Here we go.
I'll segue into WWF. 1997, how did that come about? How were you contacted? How did the wheels get set in motion to start your run there?
Well, there were guys there that were working for Vince, in talent development, talent relationships, in booking, that I had good relationships from prior years. One was Jim Cornette. Jim's been a good friend and a good ally of mine throughout my entire career. And Bruce Pritchard. Bruce had come to Global and worked in Global for a little while, and I got to know Bruce through that. And then, of course, through JR. I'd become friends with JR, throughout the years. So Vince, was getting hit from all sides by JR and Bruce and Cornette about the need to sit down and talk to me, to bring me back up and to see if we could work something out. So they reached out to me, and I flew up and met with Vince, and we talked for several hours, just like I did with Bischoff. And he asked me my opinion on certain things and where I saw myself going, and he laid out some of the ideas he had for me. And so I walked away from there that day with the offer of a 3-year deal. Now, the one area, and I'm not going to say we disagreed because it was a respectful differing of opinions. Vince did not think that the WWE, or it was still WWF, that the WWF fan base in 1997 in the late 90s would accept a masked wrestler and attach themselves to that character. He just thought the wrestling fans had become smarter than that, and they just wouldn't buy into it. And my argument with him, or the points that I presented to him, were, well, Vince, everywhere I've worked, whether it was Global, WCW, or the 2 times I've worked for Mr. Baba in All Japan, that character is very easily latched on to the fan base. And it's been a very popular character with the fan base. So I don't think your audience or the WWF audience would be any different. And he just saw it differently. But the thing that he was, and that's what makes Vince such a good businessman, the thing that he was willing to do was to see how it worked out and how it played out. And so I was one of the few guys, if you think about the way Vince does business, I was one of the few guys that went in there with my own character, my own gimmick that had already been developed, that had been over in other companies and other places around the world where I worked, and was able to keep that character and that gimmick, and Vince not have control over it or copyright over it. So he said, let's roll with it and we'll see how it goes. Well, he saw night after night and Monday night after Monday night the type of reaction I was getting when I walked through that curtain and waving that flag, and without fail, the fans would always react well, and just it would be a big pop when I would come through. So he saw that it was working. So that's when he approached me about working with Bret, and Bret had just turned babyface, or he was in the midst of that. He was in the midst of that turning from babyface to heel. He was in the midst of that heel turn. And it just felt like a glove with what Bret was wanting to do with his character, to now put the boots to the American wrestling fan base and say negative things about them and negative things about America. And then here comes the Patriot in waving that red, white, and blue flag, and it was just a natural fit and was just an angle and a program that worked well, very well.
And I love Bret Hart, as I said to you, off camera. He's still my favourite. Met him once.
He's a pro's pro, man. He is a pro's pro.
Met him once, Del. Couldn't string a sentence together when I met him. I don't know. I don't normally struggle. I've always got a lot to say, but I just couldn't because I've idolised the guy from a kid. But yet the programme of you and because it kind of, I wanted you to do well too. You know, as a fan, I got behind you, even though you were facing my guy. I bought into it absolutely hook, line, and sinker. So yeah, it was nice for us fans in UK to see it.
I tell you what made it an interesting thing is I experienced something I had never experienced before, and we were working, all over America night after night. Brett and I were working together, either main event or semi-main event. And then we were out on the West Coast. We had worked up through our way from Southern California up to Northern California. And then we'd gone into Seattle and worked. And the night after, we worked Seattle this particular night. And the next day we went up to Portland. And then we took a ferry that took us up through the West Coast of Canada. So one night we're working in the States. The very next night we're on the West Coast of Canada working our way across to the eastern side of Canada. And immediately, overnight, within a 24-hour period of time, strictly due to the geographic location of where we were at, I was instantly the heel in Canada, and Brett was the baby face. Where 24 hours before, it had been the exact opposite. And it was an interesting dynamic to just now all of a sudden the Patriot, this flag-waving patriotic American, is now the heel that's getting put out of the building, and Brett's the rock star that gets this huge pop.
In this next clip, I had former two-time Impact Knockouts champion, the current Ring of Honor Women's champion, and former AAA Women's champion, none other than the virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo. I had her on for an interview last year, as I've just said, and here we go. This is her talking about connecting with the audience, having good promos. It's very hard. I know it's very hard for talent sometimes. You can have all the assets in the ring, but when it comes down to promos, people do struggle. There's criticism as well, which I think is unfair, is unjust. The talents, it's a lot of pressure. It's hard to do. I've seen it, firsthand over many, many years. But here she is, the current Ring of Honor Women's Champion. It's the virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo.
How about like mic skills and stuff like that? Now, we hear a lot from old school people, oh, wrestling isn't what it is. I still love it. I've watched since 1990. Some people say people don't connect with the crowd. What are your thoughts on that? People have got the arsenal in the ring, but some people think people are missing it in terms of promo skills. But I think wrestling's in a great place personally, but it's just what I've read and stuff. Yeah. What do you feel about mic skills and stuff like that and people saying they're lacking?
Yeah, that wasn't something that was... we trained as much, right? Damien is all about wrestling, and it's only been maybe the last 2 or 3 years that he's really pushed promo class and promo skills. So I do think it's something that people are uncomfortable with, so they don't like to do. And me too. I was like, I don't want to. And public speaking wasn't my thing, and it hasn't been probably over the last 2 years is when I've really been able to be comfortable talking on the mic and talking in the ring and getting to know who this character is and how to portray that outward. So I think that's a super important part of wrestling. And I think as social media grows, and as we do more interviews and more behind the scenes stuff, you have to be comfortable talking. So I agree that it's probably the less trained aspect of wrestling, but it should be the most trained aspect of wrestling because you need to interact. You need to talk to people. You need to network and communicate. And if you can't do that effectively, people don't know who you are or, are kind of like, oh, they're not good at that. And that was something that I failed at. Was I wasn't a character for so many years. I didn't know how to speak or speak in a character. So it was really hard for me to get opportunities until I nailed that down.
I've been all over the world. I've been to WrestleMania. I've been to events, fan perspective. How is it wrestling in front of fans, or are you going to have fans on Sunday nights? So yeah, just how is that for you as a performer?
It's amazing. It's I think as performers, we want immediate gratification, and it's been hard because we don't have that. So we're going to the back and there's no winner's high or anything like that, because the fans aren't there to give you their energy. And that's really what they do. They push us that much further when we're tired or we can't breathe or we're in pain. Like, to hear that chanting or the claps or things like that really push us to get back up again. And that's cliche, and maybe it's kayfabe or whatever, but it's the truth. When you're down and out and you have someone yelling, Deonna, get up, it's like, I got to do it for them, right? So to finally have that back is going to be everything we've been missing and everything we need. So I honestly cannot wait.
That's brilliant. Now, what are your thoughts on the UK scene? Now, I hold UK wrestling on a pedestal. I might be, partial there. I think I don't think there's any fans in the world like the British fans. But yeah, your thoughts on the UK scene, because we've got schools everywhere. It blew up in the last 8 or 9 years over here, the independents. But yeah, your thoughts on the UK scene. I'd love to hear that. What you think?
It was always my goal to come and wrestle in the UK, because you say in the last 8 to 10 years it's blown up, and that's when I've been wrestling. So when I was able to finally come over and wrestle was like a bucket list. I can check this off because I did it, and the fans are right there with you when I talk about being your lifeline to keep going, and whether it's the bad guy or the good guy, they come up with the most creative chants I've ever heard. They want to be a part of the show as much as we are a part of the show. So I've had some of the most fun wrestling in the UK. For a long time, that was my second home. I was there so much. I have best friends who live there. So I'm also excited for the day that we can bring Impact Wrestling back to the UK, because I think it's a whole other ball game when we go over there, and the fans, not that they're better than American fans, but I'm not to be impartial, but it just brings a whole other element to wrestling when you're there, and those fans are chanting some crazy things at you.
Where was some of your favourite places in the UK? I bet you got to do some touristy stuff in your spare time. Yeah, some experiences over here that you've enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I love the food. Halloumi is my favorite thing ever. And I had never had it until I came over, and then it was every day, can we go to Tesco and get halloumi, because we ran out. I ate it all. I've obviously gotten to do London and see, Big Ben and Buckingham Palace and things like that. But really, it was just for me, I lived there, 2 or 3 weeks at a time I would go, and I didn't get to wrestle as much during that time, but, it was just fun to embrace a different culture. It's very different than America. And I fell in love with it.
Who would be a dream opponent for the Virtuosa from the past now? Ooh. Somebody, maybe, someone who's inactive now. And I know there's so many, but yeah, I thought, I'll ask you that. That's come off the top of my head, that.
My answer is always Trish Stratus. She came back Summerslam a couple years ago. She says she's retired again. But if she was to ever come back, I'd love that, because that's the woman who made me want to be a wrestler. I loved to love her and I loved to hate her. And Trish Stratus was just it for me.
I've got to showcase some British talent as well. Broken but glorious Chris Lappin, obviously UK based from England. So yeah, here we are, Chris. Here is a man who's been in the business for 26 years. Incredible, set the bar high, was so well regarded in the UK and went on to America and all over the world to wrestle, and can still go today. It's amazing. It is the Phoenix, Jody Fleisch, one of my favourites, absolutely. And here we go. This is him talking about first getting into America many, many years ago. And just amazing. Here he is, the Phoenix, Jody Fleisch.
Some matches now that stood out for me, and it was with yourself and Johnny Storm having these incredible matches. How was it? And how was it getting the fan reaction that you got when you're having those matches with Johnny?
I don't want to give you the same answer to every question, but it was loads of fun. We were working for different types of crowds on different types of shows in different settings You know, I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more at the time. We got our little reputations building and all of that. We were getting around, and we ended up doing, you know, we've ended up working. Well, I don't think there's many places we haven't worked together since, you know. And I guess it's yeah, looking at it, it's lasted, hasn't it? Because we're still bloody doing it. So yeah, it was lots of fun, learning curve, all of that.
I loved it. Right, we had the British stuff with obviously the wrestling channel. And then, obviously, when you guys went over to the States for CZW and all that, man, and we could see those matches as well. It wasn't just the UK matches. I just loved hearing the American crowd reaction when you guys went in there and just did your stuff, like got your stuff in.
Me too. Yeah, I was lapping it up. Loved it.
What were the trips like to America back then?
Well, actually, with Johnny, there was only one for me because we done that first tour. And then after that, I kept going back and forth working, was it pretty much only for Ring of Honor, whereas he was working for a company that was called WXW. Am I right about that? Did I get the initials right? Maybe I didn't. But he was working for a group out in Los Angeles. So we done that first tour together. But then after that, we were each going sort of separately. But yeah, it was all all good times. Loads of experiences, loads of road stories, loads of fun shows, you know, loads of new mates, good times.
Can you remember any of the road stories? Have you got anything you can remember from the States?
You know what? Several just popped right into my head. I don't know what it must have been floating around there somewhere. And then when you asked me, a handful of stories popped into my head, but they all involved a guy called Trent Acid, who was a really, really good guy, but he's died now, and they're really not wholesome. So I'm really sorry, but I can't share them publicly.
It's all right.
It's just because they were the first ones that popped into my head, you know. But I can just say that they're fun ones.
And let's stick with the British heritage, the British scene. A man who broke through in 2003, started wrestling, has become a fantastic superstar worldwide. It's none other than Mark Haskins. And this is him talking about breaking into the business and being on cards very early on in his career with AJ Styles, to name but a few. So yeah, let's keep the British going, the Britishness of the episode of this, the clips from the vault, and it is Mr. Mark Haskins.
I think maybe talk about now about the British scene, how it's changed over the years, because it was totally different. I know it's cliche, people say about it. I look at it from a fan perspective. You might look at it totally different, being a wrestler, being a worker. How has it changed from when you first got into to where it is now, the UK scene?
So when I started out, it was... So I started training in 2003. I was a fan of British wrestling for probably about a year before that, 18 months. And the first show that I went to was an all-star wrestling show at the Wyvern Theatre in Swindon, right? And then the next show I went to after that was, what's it called? Revival at Crystal Palace, right? The Tommy Boyd promotion. So it was ushering in this. It already felt like it was ushering in this new era, because I became a fan of the FWA. I started to watch their product and see guys like Jody, Fleisch, Johnny Storm, Doug Williams. I was a huge fan of those guys, and I loved going to the shows and seeing them. And they were bringing in guys from abroad who, being a hardcore wrestling fan at that time, like I was, I knew about places like Ring of Honor, places like TNA that weren't as big as what they ended up becoming. And it was great seeing guys like AJ Styles come in, or Jerry Lynn, or Christopher Daniels, all these talents that had big names going on elsewhere, and then they came over to the UK. And I did a year of refereeing through 2005, and then my first year of actual wrestling was from 2006 onwards. So this was kind of the era of around when 1PW was bringing in crowds. So 1PW suddenly, within the space of like a month, I ended up in this really bizarre opportunity where I joined a group of wrestlers called the Chavs. Pretty self-explanatory, right? And on the first night that I was a part of the group, one of the main guys who had ththese opportunities lined up for 1PW, and that ended up being injured. So I literally walked into this spot where it was like, okay, we need somebody to fill this spot. it's going to be you. So I think like my third match was for 1PW in front of like 2,000 people. Then like my fourth match was in like a steel cage match or something like that for the FWA. And then it was just, it was bizarre. I literally went from like nothing to then like everything in such a short space of time. And it was one of these things where you just have to think on your feet and just try and adapt to the situation as, you know, and learn as you go. And, you know, you'll never feel ready for any situation that you're ever faced with. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's up to you. Like acknowledging that is kind of almost a step ahead, because you know, at least, well, hey, I'm going to do the best that I can. And, you know, having that acknowledgement also helps you adapt and prepare for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Or at least it did in my case. And I wanted to do the best that I could. So suddenly I end up in dressing rooms with guys like AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, and that. And like, the guys who I'd literally been going to shows to watch a few years ago were suddenly like, you know, across the dressing room from me. So I was around guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Daniels, Kazarian and that. And it was just sudden reality check of like, oh, damn, like this is, you know, my reality has changed quickly. You know what I mean? So it was great.
Our next stop on the Stu's Wrestling Podcast Vault Clips episode, a special episode for BBG. Mr. Chris Lappin, thank you for this invite. And this will go down actually as one of the most wild episodes. Now, I'm a bit crazy myself, but I had none other than Duane Gill, Mr. Gilbert, on the show. And my word, it was wild from start to finish. What a man this guy is. And this is him developing the Gilbert character and running some matches with the late, great Luna Vachon. And fantastic. Great stories. Amazing. I love Duane. He's amazing. What a guy. So here we go.
I was doing the Underfaker, and then I did Gilbert. And how Gilbert became a WWF thing was I was Duane Gill, light heavyweight champion, on a job spot.
Yep.
And we were doing house shows, and I was in the back talking to Percy and Kane, you know, Paul Bear and Kane.
Yep, absolutely.
And I was telling them all that, and I said, yeah, and I did Gilbert. And Paul Bear looked at me and goes, oh, Duane Gill, I think you've got something there, boy. And I just laughed and didn't worry about it, right? But the next day it was TVs, and we were in catering, and everybody starts going, Gilbert. Because he got everybody together. So I threw the tray down, jumped up, and everybody started laughing. That was it. I went home 2 days later, get a phone call from the office. Duane, yeah? What's this Gilbert thing you do? Oh, I just make fun of Goat. Well, bring everything you got. You're now Gilbert. We're going to do that Monday. I said, okay, you got it. So I brought everything, and I was supposed to wrestle Edge. And I said, are we making fun of the guy? And they're like, yeah. I said, well, Edge is a big star. I'm a jobber that just became a star. He can beat me no matter what. Everybody knows that. Give me Luna. Because Luna was a good friend of mine. And Luna's going, Duane, this is wrong. No, this is wrong. This is no. And I'm going, Luna, if you want to be for real, you could probably kick my ass for real. If you go Luna Vachon, I wouldn't mind.
She was hard as nails, that lady.
Oh my God. But as soft as
yeah.
And she was so sweet. If people who knew her wouldn't believe that was the same person. You know what I mean? And I said, come on, Luna. We're going to make fun of the guy. Come on. And she goes, all right. And so if you remember in the match, right in the middle of the match, we ran into each other in the middle of the ring, and she went, I'm lost. And I went, ball shot, because I couldn't think of nothing else. And she went down, pow, gave me a ball shot, and I grabbed her arm with my leg. And I went, oh, as loud as I could. And I'm looking her right in the face. She's going, let go of my arm, you son of a bitch. I swear I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Because I was holding her arm, you know what I mean? And then I fell over, boom, with her arm in between my legs. And I was like, I swear I'm going to kill you when we get in the locker room. I'm going to kill you. It was so funny. But when we came back after that match, I walked through the curtain. Every McMahon, every wrestler, every production, everybody that had anything to do with backstage was back there, standing there. All the women, their makeup was running down their face. They're all laughing and clapping, and it was the greatest honor I ever got in wrestling. Even over winning the title, that the biggest honor. All of my peers, people that I've looked up to for years, were clapping and cheering me. It doesn't get no better, brother.
This next clip from the vault was just amazing. It was amazing getting this guy on. It is the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The 10 pounds of gold. He carried it so well, so majestically, and had a great feud with Nick Aldis. And he is the eldest NWA World's Champion. He was 51 at the time when he got the gold, but he had a 400-plus day run with the title. It's none other than Tim Storm, and it was a privilege, an absolute privilege to get such a nice man on the show. He is beloved within the industry, down to earth, amazing. Here he is, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Mr. Tim Storm.
Tim, I'm a huge fan of your wrestling, but I gravitated most. We touched upon this pre-recording. I liked your heartfelt promos on NWO Power. I need to read this out. The realism you evoke is something young guys in the business could learn a lot from. What promo advice would you give these guys?
One of the things that I've been fortunate to do is with James Beard, we've been doing some clinics, teaching. And I talk about, I think because I'm a natural communicator, I have an advantage. Some people just aren't, it's not natural for them to stand up in front of people, but I've been doing that my whole life. Here would be my advice, and I'm passing on advice that's not mine, right? You have to find something that means something to you. It's like and I know that's probably part of the problems that we see in wrestling today is if you're handed a script and said, go out there and say this, what you're saying is not you, right? I mean, you're saying somebody else's words and somebody else's you may not have a feeling for. Dusty Rhodes makes the comment, and one of the things that we talked about, and I've been blessed to be able to spend time with some of the great promo guys in the business. Jake Roberts that took me under his wing. I mean, and no matter what you think about Jake as a person, the man was talented and one of the greatest psychologists in the business.
Incredible.
But Dusty Rhodes says, don't practice your promos. He goes, because if you practice them, they become a rehearsed, they're not emotional. You lose all the emotion in it. So, for me, and I'll say it again, nobody was more surprised that people loved my promos. Nobody's more surprised than I was. Because I'm not out there putting on a show, right? I'm out there speaking from my heart. You got to believe what you're saying. If you don't, nobody's going to believe it either. So I spend a lot of time in my head in what Mick Foley would call promo land. Where I'm having, this is what's important to me. This is the message I want to say. How am I going to say it? I don't know. Let's see how it comes out. And a lot of times I'm standing at the curtain, about to walk out to the podium or whatever, and I'm literally going, wonder what I'm going to say this time, right? The big relief for me prior to episode 1 of NWA Power, I had a conversation on the phone with Dave Lagana. I had been told, I knew my match was against Nick. That was not a surprise. But he goes, I want to give you like 60 or 90 seconds at the podium, at ringside. You start thinking about what you want to say. And I said, okay. And I had some things I wanted to say. I wanted people to understand how important it was to me, the opportunity. And my concern was legitimate. I don't feel stressed to go out there and do that. It's at NWA, they don't say this. They say sink or swim. Here's your time. You go out there, and if you either make it or you don't. And so my stress was none of that. My stress was, I've only got 60 seconds. How am I going to get this message? I've got so much things in my heart that I want to. How am I going to get that out? So I'm standing at the curtain, about to walk through. Remember, no music, no nothing, right? That's NWA Power. That's old school. And I'm thinking, what do I take out that I want to say? And Billy Corrigan walks up at Gorilla, and he goes, hey, Tim, don't worry about the time. You go out. We believe in you. Do what you want to do. If something goes wrong, we can always edit it. Just go say what you want to say. And then what the results are, is fortunately people like what I had to say. And I just believe if you stand up and speak from your heart, and if you're, and in wrestling, that's a challenge, right? I mean, depending on your role, if I had to go out there and say I hate the world or I hate Nick out, whatever, that's a whole lot more difficult to say than the truth. So it's, You got to believe in what you're saying. And that's easy. When they say go out and say what you want, I can tell them I can say what I believe. That's easy.
We're not having to go too far on the final clip from the vault, and it is episode 108, which I dropped in March, and it's none other than 80s female wrestler Mad Maxine. It was an honour to get this lady on. She did the business on her terms. She got out, she wasn't happy, but she did have a good career, especially independently around the Florida area. But yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Mad Maxine. Unbelievable. This was set up by author, writer Javier Ost, who writes for Pro Wrestling Stories. So to be recommended by somebody to interview someone from wrestling was amazing. So I thank you, Javier. But here we are. It's Mad Maxine explaining getting out the business in the 80s.
But women's wrestling was always there. It's just, the profile of it. I feel for you guys in the time when you were doing it. Because you guys are putting it all on the line just the same as them.
Right. And, I don't know if it's true now, but somebody described to me as like, that women were always thought of as like a gimmick, like midget wrestling or, jello wrestling or, anything with like a gimmick. It wasn't really considered, the real deal. And, that's pretty insulting, considering, as you say, I'm in touch with the women of my era, and they're many of them are paying the price for having taken so many bumps and so many falls, and it's really hard on your body. I mean, your body is it just just wears your body out, and not everybody, but I felt kind of grateful to have gotten out. I mean, I did it. It was I had the experience for a couple of years and got out before I got seriously injured. And I was like, whew.
Did you worry about the girls that were still in the business and in the situations they were in when you left?
I was, I didn't actually. I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about escaping because my last, I had that experience in Houston where everything got stolen from me. And then the very last match that I had was at the Astrodome in New Orleans with Dark Journey. And I got hurt and humiliated. My top fell off and in the middle, and it was like a massive crowd. And just the whole thing was just like, I was looking for a sign. It was like, okay, just show me a sign when I should leave. And it was like, got ripped off, got humiliated, got hurt, time to get out. And it coincided with my sister getting married up in D.C. And so I went there and I was just like, that was it. I wanted to have a full experience. I didn't want to just the whole point of doing it was not just put my toe in the water and then write about it, to take something. I wanted to, I wanted to be part of it. And I feel like I achieved that, but I also admire and respect the women who have done it for 20 and 30 years. I mean, they're just some, veterans who have really, they really have put everything into it. And that's what they wanted to do with their lives. But I think some of them are really paying the price with their health right now.
Thank you very, very much for this invite, Chris Lappin, for Broken But Glorious. Me guesting with Stu's Wrestling Podcast. As you've seen, some clips. I could have picked hundreds of clips from the 111 episodes that I've done, but thank you very, very much. This is to showcase some of the talent, wrestlers, personalities that have been on my show. And once again, Chris Lappin, thank you very, very much for this invitation. And I've loved putting some clips up from the show, which has run now since 2019, over 3 years. It's crazy how fast time has gone, but I have loved every second of doing this show. And once again, thank you. Thank you for this invitation, for allowing me to showcase for your listeners what Stu's Wrestling Podcast is all about.